Welcome to Ventures from the Valley, a podcast by R136 Ventures. This is the show where we highlight the biggest topics in business and investment with some of the biggest experts in the space to help you learn how to grow your portfolio in venture capital. I'm Victor Orlovski. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of Ventures from the Valley. I'm honored to present today Mark Gazit, who is my friend and CEO of a startup which we invested in a while ago. Mark stands at forefront of innovation in the tech industry. He is a well-known expert in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, fintech, and payment technologies. With a career marked by transformative leadership role, Mark has propelled companies from early-stage ventures to global leaders. As the executive chairman and a visionary leader known for tuning the impossible to possible to reality, Mark has catalyzed growth and innovation across various sectors, including his pivotal role at ThetaRay, the company he helped to co-found and led for many years. He elevated the company to become a leading authority in AI-based big data analytics, revolutionizing financial cybercrime prevention. So, Mark, I just broke this into parts in this conversation. So I want you to start with your role as CEO. And if you can just emphasize the role of CEO versus role of a founder, because you've been in both shoes. So maybe you can tell a little bit about ThetaRay first, this company you helped to co-found and led for so many years. If you can just give it in your own words, like a few sentences, what this company is all about.
Sure. And first of all, Victor, it's a great pleasure and honor to be with you on this podcast. And thank you very much. You're a great example that shows that doing business with good friends and true professionals like yourself eventually creates value for investors. So thank you very much for all your partnership over the years. And ThetaRay is a company that uses very deep AI, which a few years ago we couldn't even convince people exist, analyze billions over billions of transactions and help financial institutions, banks, fintechs, and commercial organizations to identify transactions that are dangerous, such as human trafficking, terrorist funding, sex slavery, etc. The company today is leading the implementation of AI within financial services, working with the largest banks in the world, all around the world, Mexico, Spain, the Emirates, and of course the United States, and the best fintechs in the world that use ThetaRay technology to analyze the transactions constantly online all the time, identify suspicious activities, and they take the necessary actions.
I recall, Mark, that when I invested in ThetaRay back in 2017, this company was yet in a very early evolution of its business, and it was like testing waters in many different industries. I remember we had customers outside of fintech, some airplane companies, some other industrial companies. Why you have chosen finally fintech? Why fintech became the most important and maybe even to better say the only industry you are focusing on now? What was wrong with all other industries? Are they not ready to be AI driven? Are they not ready to accept your technology, or your technology is not so good for other industries?
So it's a very good question. And 10 years ago when the quote unquote unsupervised or machine learning was invented, or the idea of building large language models or large transactional models, people thought about generic AI. And at that time, OpenAI was established, ThetaRay was established, and basically artificial intelligence, the way we know it today, from OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc., was a technology that was looking for customers, was looking for problems. And this is my fifth company, and I always try to find problem that is the most painful in the world and has not been solved. And that time, the most painful problem was potential cybersecurity attacks on critical infrastructure. Allegedly, according to the media, Israelis managed to attack nuclear facilities in Iran using viruses. Iranians attacked Aramco, which was an oil company using cybersecurity attacks. So using AI to identify things that human beings cannot identify sounded like a good idea. So General Electric invested and became an amazing partner. They introduced us to Singapore Airlines that also invested. We made a big difference by analyzing data and making sure that those systems are protected. So it definitely was a very big problem, and the technology was a very good technology to solve the problem. Unfortunately, it's not a very common problem. How many General Electrics you have in the world? How many airplanes have been hacked during the last 10 years? So at a certain point of time as a CEO, and maybe that's one of the difference between founders and CEOs. As a CEO, you need to understand where the money is. So we started the process. It was very thorough, tough, I would say even aggressive process because it was clear that people that are good for industrial security might not be good for other areas. We mapped all the possible industries. We mapped all the pains that they have. And we found that financial institutions have a pain that is very, very severe. Banks become digital. It's so easy now to steal money, to move money, to launder money using the digital means. But it's also a very common problem because every bank, every financial institution, every fintech faces this type of situation. So it was natural for us to go to that direction. And we were also very lucky to have investors like yourself that were very friendly. I remember I was really scared when I came to the chairman and the CEO of General Electric, who personally sort of led the investment in ThetaRay, and I said, we decided sort of go after the banks. And he said, Mark, you made a very good decision. I said, why? He said, because that's where the money is. So, so in a way, that's where the money is.
Okay, so fintech and banks, right? You do both. You do this early start payment companies, which we call fintech of all kinds, and you serve established banks. Are they similar? Do they have similar issues, or this is somewhat different? How do you pursue it?
Frozen for a second, so maybe you can. Yeah, can you repeat the question? You're frozen, and so I couldn't hear it part of it, and then they can cut it in the
sure,
sure,
absolutely. So my question, Mark, look, you serve both at ThetaRay. You serve large corporates, and you serve small fintech companies. Do they experience similar issues? Is it the same product you sell? Are the same customers behaviorally? I mean, do they use this product same way, or there are some differences between how big banks use it versus to fintechs?
Yeah, I have to say it's probably one of the biggest successes we had cracking this, because both of them have the same problem. If they move money to a terrorist organization, it's a criminal offense. They go to jail, or at the least getting a very large fine. Banks can lose their reputation, can lose a lot of money. Fintechs can lose their entire ability to run the company. So the product itself is the same, but the packaging is totally different. Banks have chief risk officers. They have an army of analysts. They would like to have this tool as a tool that will help them. The way to sell to banks is to work with the technological department, is work with the risk department, is understand that the system can be deployed with an IT department. It's understanding that there is a legal operation. At the end of the day, working all the way up to the chairman of the bank, and then making the sale, and which can take 12 to 18 months. And then, of course, a process of implementation that we can talk about a little bit more. Fintechs have the same problem, but they not always have chief risk officer. They definitely don't have army of analysts, and usually the decision maker is the CEO, in many cases who's the founder, who is also the chief product officer. And one of the things they need is exactly the opposite of banks needed, which basically they want a system, they want it to be installed fast, easy to deploy, they want it fast, they want it quick, and they want it easy and smooth operated. The good news is that sales process can take 2 months or even months. The fastest one we had was 18 days, very large fintech. But it's a totally different packaging. And we actually had to divide the company into 2 organizations. One was working with the very large banks, which, by the way, is very, very important because it provides you the credibility with the regulators, etc. And the second one, agile department, very low cost, very fast go-to-market that works with fintechs. And this cooperation works very well. It's not easy, but when it works, it's amazing.
Okay, so my friend, who is a chief compliance officer in one of the leading banks in the US, he told me confidentially that they hired over 60,000 compliance officers only in 2023. And I'm wondering, are they not aware about this solution, ThetaRay? If they, deployed ThetaRay in their platform, in their business, would they hire less? Would they hire no compliance officers at all? And if it is so easy to automate compliance, why banks keep hiring that crazy number of compliance officers every year? These compliance officers are being hired in that many numbers in 1 year only. Does that mean that these managers in the banks are unaware about solutions like ThetaRay, or ThetaRay simply could not solve all the problems?
It's interesting. When you said, aren't they aware? I was thinking that you will say, aren't they afraid? But you said aware. Look, let's face it. We see what's going on in Hollywood with AI. Actors really afraid that AI will replace them. In banking institutions, it started 2 or 3 years ago. One of the largest banks in Europe that is our customer. It was a big fear, and we had to go all the way up to the chairwoman of that bank, and together build a plan. It wasn't, obviously, it's the bank's job to build the execution process. But the idea was that we need to make sure that we convince those tens of thousands of analysts that when ThetaRay is deployed, they will not lose their business. They will just be able to do more interesting stuff. And it was part of the decision-making process. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that this bank is probably one of the fastest growing banks in the region that banks operates. But it was very, very diligent in explaining people why ThetaRay is a good solution, why it should be installed gradually, so it will not replace people, but we will empower people. I have to say, in some banks, very large banks in the US, there are strong unions, and we need to be very careful. And then the system being deployed for one specific area, for example, correspondent banking, which is just being able to make transactions outside of the United States. And then it's easy. And then people see that AI is actually not killing them, not taking the jobs, but making them more happy and making them be able to do more and perform more meaningful tasks. It's also one of the differences between banks, so I would say incumbent banks, and the neobanks and the financial and fintechs. Fintechs and neobanks are willing to deploy the system as fast as possible because they don't want to hire 60,000 people. Very large banks have already hired 60,000 people. And then the question is, what do we do with these people if the system is so good? And of course, the people also would like to show that they're still better. And the way ThetaRay solved it is we always say it's man-machine solution. So our machine is working with the people or women-machine solution and not against the people.
Okay, so eventually you just mentioned so many times AI. Again, when we invested back in ThetaRay in 2017, we more were speaking about algorithms, about this unique method of finding anomalies, but we didn't really call it AI. To be honest, right? We called it algorithms and at maximum machine learning algorithms, but never called it AI. I don't recall we used this word. Is it just a buzzword? Do you believe that AI will really eliminate so many people from their jobs? Are you afraid of AI in general? Do you think it's more harm than value? Or you think that AI is made for good and AI could not threat people and humanity in general? What's your view?
So first, Victor, I know you are investments and you are really good investing in companies that people initially think that they know, that don't even have a name, and then those companies become multi-billion-dollar companies. And the same has happened to ThetaRay. We didn't even know how to call this thing that the system is doing, those algorithms that eventually thinking like human beings. Nobody believed that it will be working, except a few sort of scientists, etc. And again, 10 years ago, the idea of machines can be taught by imposing very large amount of data on them was very new. OpenAI was established in 2014. ThetaRay was established end of 2013. It took time to train the system. It took time to make system work. I did one of the TEDx and I basically was asked, will this, it was the beginning of the AI, will this AI kill human beings, take over? And my view is that any new technology brings threats. When press was invented, people said, that's it. That's the end of the human memory. And nobody will tell stories anymore. And when telephone was created, people said, that's it. We will not visit our family anymore. I remember when I built the first internet service provider in the Middle East, everybody told me, Mark, you don't understand. Your kids will not speak the same language as you speak. And by the way, they are right. But I think that the advantages that this technology brings to us is much, much more important than the threats that technology creates. Eventually, we humans know how to deal with it. And maybe if we'll have time, we'll talk a little bit about the fact that AI will be able to attack human beings. And then we will need to use AI to create digital guards that will protect us. But let's see, maybe we'll mention it later. And anyway, currently, I have to say that you asked the most important question that everybody asks me today. There is no single private equity fund that doesn't speak with me and wants my advice. And my view is that AI is definitely just a generic buzzword. Saying we use AI, it's like saying we use software. Everybody's using AI. And those who don't use AI, they should have been using AI already. If not, they will lose the company. It's like, retailers using software. What's unique about AI, and there is quite a large number of research, and I love one of them done in Harvard Business School of Management, is monetization of AI is not a generic AI. AI is a good tool. It's like software, but you need to know exactly which type of problem you're solving. If you try to solve all the problems, usually it will not be successful. So it was a long answer to a question, but basically AI saying we are AI companies, like we are a software company. Okay, so tell me exactly which problem you solve. And by the way, one thing that I recommend everybody is to look at companies that solve boring problems using AI, because AI might be interesting. But when you solve really boring problems using AI, then you can make much more money.
Thank you. Eventually, my thoughts about AI is that AI is definitely a problem solver rather than a threat. So you have to be afraid of people rather than technology. So technology itself doesn't harm. And I do believe about AI is that it is a superior technology. So if you think of AI to be a super intelligent being, then super intelligent being could not harm. But before it becomes super intelligent, and that's the way it could push back and not being able to protest against being used abnormally, AI can be a threat in hands of people. And we see what's going on in media, right? Media is a good example of how AI can force us to think in a certain way with certain bias about certain things, right? And that's what the media is all about. It just uses the algorithms to increase our bias. And
there will be a huge number of companies that will be created to do what I call AI security, which is not cybersecurity. It might be similar, but it's checking deep fakes, poisoning, etc. I was one of the very, very first investors in a small company called Clarity. And a few days ago, they made the seed round of $16 million, which in today's world is not bad at all, identifying deepfakes. So I think that you're so right. AI is a problem solver. It will keep solving problems. It's changing the world. I think it's the same level of magnitude as that internet. And it will create problems. Internet created a lot of problems, but it also solved a lot of problems. And I think the same will happen with AI, but in much larger scale. So we're in a very good place, to enjoy this new wave that is coming to us.
Indeed. And I think that some people believe that AI hype is not going to end with some dramatic failures. I do think that it will, right? As every hype, it should fail. So, I mean, that we are over expecting from AI. And at some point, it will cool down, right? And then it will cool down dramatically. It means that 95% of companies which are funded today in AI and LLM space will probably go bankrupt. And 5 companies will become next generation of top tier companies, which we will know for decades, which will create a new treasury for mankind and will be the most capitalized companies in the world. So I do believe that this hype will end, but it will evolve to like only few companies that will make it and which will become the top of this world companies, the most capitalized and the most important one. So I think that we are going to see a dramatic shift in top 10 companies, global leaders, with some newcomers from AI space. And it should not necessarily be those companies which we know today, like OpenAI or Anthropic or any other, right? It could just be all new companies. So what is good about AI is that it could all of a sudden be like a new algorithm or a new dimension, which will leapfrog to something completely unexpected. I mean, you remember how these LLMs, these large language models evolved. Back 2.5 years ago, nobody thought of this explosion of LLMs. And then it happened all of a sudden. So there might be a new generation of something coming in this space, which will basically change the whole industry to a completely different set of technologies. Are you afraid of that for ThetaRay? Do you think ThetaRay is positioned well enough to really capture on this new wave of technology if needed?
So I think that every company should be ready for that. I'm a big believer in crossing the chasm or the Gartner hype cycle. ThetaRay is my 5th company and it happened in all my companies. It's hard to believe, but NetVision, the internet service provider, almost bankrupt because initially there were not good applications for internet. And SkyVision, the company that investors made 110x on each dollar they invested, at certain point of time, almost lost its market. We all know that usually there is like the early adopters hype, which happened with OpenAI. It's crazy. The company reached $1 billion customers in like just few months. And then eventually the hype disappeared. We can already see that the number of users is decreasing, which has happened all the time. And then there is like a chasm, or sorry for my language in this respectable podcast, but some people call it, deep shit zone, where companies stuck. And those who stuck and can't get out of it will die, or maybe will become zombies. But those who will get out of this, what they call value of death, will be really successful. It happened to ThetaRay. Initially we had an issue. We had early adopters. They were really great. And then COVID hit us. And then the mainstream just couldn't or didn't want to buy our solutions because it was on premises. How can you serve a customer in Singapore when you can't fly? Luckily for us, we took very, very sharp, fast, swift, and if you remember, aggressive actions, letting people go, changing the business model and move to the cloud. So we don't know which crisis will come, but ThetaRay, and now there's a old, new, amazing management there. And of course, I'm at their service. They need to prepare for the next crisis because it will happen. I don't know any good company that didn't go through crises. Think about Microsoft and IBM and Google and Facebook. Just, 2 years ago, people said that's the end of Facebook. Meta didn't work. And then look what happened to the shares just recently. NVIDIA, people thought that nobody will buy gaming computers anymore because everybody's moving to the mobile phone. And then they reinvented themselves and they say, okay, good. It's good for gaming. It's also good for initially Bitcoin mining and then for AI. So the crisis will come. And then there's a choice for every CEO. Do I become a victim of the crisis? Or like Winston Churchill said, it's a shame to waste a good crisis. I really believe that every crisis is an amazing, amazing opportunity. And that's what we've done.
I do agree with you. So we spoke enough of AI and these fancy things. I want to get back to boring things. So I will give you a little bit of theses I believe are true for this today's global world. So we were living in what we called globalization era for many decades, probably between 1960s to beginning of 2000s. That was a globalization era. And banks were foreposts, were main force of this globalization. I remember I was out of the college and I started working for this bank called ABN AMRO, which was one of the global 3 or 4 global banks. And they were competing with Citi and HSBC, opening branches, new locations. So I was honored to start working in Uzbekistan, Tashkent for ABN AMRO Bank, while Citibank opened, I think, in Almaty, in a neighboring state. and HSBC opened, I think, in Kyrgyzstan. So they were like hunting for new locations, new geographies, and making global businesses. I do believe that we now live in the world which is de-globalizing. And you remember in early 2000s, there were a bunch of people with posts, anti-globalization posts at every global summit, and we were laughing at them. But now these people eventually won, and we are now living in the world which is destroying from the globalization perspectives. So, and banks eventually became from the front runners of globalization to front runners of anti-globalization. So there is a world of antitrust when banks do not believe and fintechs do not believe each other. And that's the reason why compliance really is becoming so much of an issue. Because if banks, if parties trust each other, you don't need to check everything, right? You start checking every single transaction when you stop trusting. And for some reason, and there might be many reasons behind it, this trust has gone, right? And I think that we will be living in this anti-globalization framework for another decade or so. I just give you a question which I have no answer for. So a global trade of illegal weapons is estimated to be about $800 billion annually. Illegal trade of drugs is around $600 billion. Slavery is $50 billion. Organs is around $100 billion. Other illegal goods and services delivered globally is around $300 billion. So it comes to almost $2.5 trillion of trade, which is done illegally. And these volumes are growing with CAGR of over 10% annually. So how can you imagine this world to be that much focused on compliance, that much focused on AML, while all these goods and services and money, and this is not pocket money, right? You could not move $2 trillion in cash, right? You rightly said that's all electronic. So how can you explain it? How can, on one hand, compliance be such a big issue and all sorts of technologies and people being deployed? And on the other hand, this huge volumes of illegal trade and illegal money floating in the world. So is there any kind of a mystery here? How would you explain it as a rational person?
Yeah, I think Kalman and Tversky got a Nobel Prize in economics, proving that people are not rational. But I would try to be as rational as I can. And first of all, unfortunately, some people will say sadly, some people might say not. The world is going through the process of de-globalization. You're absolutely right. I just recently joined a beautiful lecture by Professor Awi Abdelal from Harvard, who studies globalization. And he came with some sort of alarming news because he showed that before any war, there is a process of very sharp globalization. It doesn't work, and then there is very sharp deglobalization. By the way, at least their point of view was that currently the deglobalization will not be so sharp because the price of World War III will be so high that people will try to avoid it. So, and by the way, if there will be World War III, then probably our podcast will not be very relevant because of the types of weapons people will be using. So I don't think that we need to plan for that. But take into account that there will be gradual deregulation, deglobalization, as you said. I think you're absolutely right. And probably looking at financial institutions, especially banks, is the best way to look at the future of the world, because the only thing banks sell today is trust. There is no other reason for the survival of the banks. Everybody can provide that type of services. Everybody can build branchless solutions. Everybody can manage money today with the amount of technology that exists. But not everybody can sell the amount of trust that banking are selling. And I do think that there is sort of a domestic trust. So you will trust British banks. Americans will trust American banks. What is disappearing because of this world of first globalization and then deglobalization is trust between countries and trust between banks. That's why systems like SWIFT don't work anymore. Because if you think about it, how do you, when you transfer money to me, let's assume that before we became friends, you don't know who I am. Maybe I'm a good guy, but maybe, I'm sort of doing some naughty stuff? And how do I know that you are the right person? And how your bank knows that me is me and you are you? So the idea was very simple. It's like United Nations. There was a treaty. Everybody was part of the treaty. There was a system that is a secure system called SWIFT that basically says, look, if you are a bank on SWIFT network and I'm a bank on SWIFT network, we are good friends. We trust each other. So each bank will do what they call KYC, know your customer process. We'll check who you are, and then we can trust each other. This thing is totally broken right now. Because you, as a bank, cannot validate people anymore. We used to be in a situation where you have to come to a branch of a bank, sign a bunch of papers, the banker will look at you. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't steal your identity, but if you want to steal 10,000 identities, you will have to find 10,000 people that look like Victor. Not very easy, not as handsome as you. And today, you just create identities using ChatGPT. And then you do online registration and onboarding, and there are a very large number of banks on SWIFT network. So I think that it will really hurt world economy, because at the end of the day, money is something that fuels the world. And I think that compliance companies that competed with ThetaRay made huge mistake over the years, because they tried to solve the problem, the threat. They tried to avoid criminals of onboarding the network. And I think this is the wrong problem. The right problem is how we allow good people to get service. You know that today people from Nigeria cannot open accounts in British banks because, exactly. Now, there are really great people, honest people in all those countries, not sanctioned, not at all. There are many Russian citizens that just want to pay, for the tuition of their daughter in Oxford. But because there was no good way to identify these people and check them, and worse than that, to identify them on the level of each and every transaction, it didn't work. And those poor people couldn't open accounts. By the way, rightly so, because it can be a genuine person that opens the account and then somebody comes and takes over the account and starts using this account as a money mule. That's why companies like ThetaRay, and I think ThetaRay was the first one in the world that did it. We came with the promise of, we can help you to make more business, to serve your customers better, to onboard customers from Nigeria and from Ukraine and from Russia who are good people. And this way, we help our customers to build highways that good people can drive with, high speed, smoothly, without interruptions, while we build big barriers for the bad guys. Now, because you need to make a decision not on a level of a customer, but on a level of a transaction, it was impossible just 5 years ago without the use of AI. So I believe that the situation of mistrust has a potential to ruin the economy, literally to break the ties between companies. But I'm optimistic. I think that technologies like AI and companies like ThetaRay will be the one that will create, this glue, will allow, to keep those pipes clean. So the blood or the fuel that fuels world economy will be able to flow.
Yeah, I wish your words to be true and to be the case. I personally think that people who really do illegal trade can hide themselves and can do this illegal trade and continue to evolve because they can pay a lot on hiding themselves, right? And ordinary people who could not hide themselves are suffering from this mistrust, antitrust, and anti-globalization. So if you make 200% margins on drugs or weapons or anything, you can easily afford of doing everything needed to mimic, to be totally clean, to be totally transparent. I do believe that, by the way, states generally made a very poor job on finding the way to somehow fight fraud and somehow fight AML issues. I give you an example. When you enter to whatever country, right, you do not show passport in every shop, right? You do not pass a KYC every time you pay with your credit card. So why states couldn't perform their duties on compliance checks? And they pushed these duties towards banks, right? They basically made banks in charge, and they made banks responsible for something what the state should be responsible for. And I think that's a very big mistake was made because banks are commercial organizations, right? So in exchange of license, states started pushing all those compliance issues to banks and fintechs, which I think is totally a misfunction. right? So at the end of the day, you can then ask every merchant to verify an identity or to verify a source of wealth, right? And that's a crazy thing, right? And that's what is happening. So I was just leasing real estate when I was living in UK, right? So even real estate, lenders and agents, they verify your wealth and they verify your identity, which is crazy, right? I don't believe it should happen at all. But I think that we spoke a lot about this macro, being it compliance or AI. So let's speak a little bit about micro, which I think is of the same interest for people who are listening to this podcast. So let's switch to your role as CEO. And maybe you can just tell a little bit about how is it different from being CEO or hired CEO in a startup versus being a founder? What would you recommend, and when would you recommend to change founder to a hired CEO? What's your take here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I find myself constantly joining good founders as a paid CEO. Some people call me a founder of companies, and in ThetaRay, definitely I joined so early that formally I will probably be considered co-founder, and that's what the professors that build the company say. So I'm in this unique position where I meet a lot of great people. If they have great idea, then I join them. And for me personally, the passion is different. Some people are passionate about technology. I love technology. I'm an engineer by education, but what really makes me passionate is converting technology into money, in like monetizing technology. For me, technology that cannot be converted into income is less interesting, and I have good justification. It's not greed. It's because if nobody wants to buy it, probably it doesn't change the world. Having said that, I think it gives, you need different type of people at different types of companies. It's very difficult to think about really cool ideas, crazy ideas, when you constantly think about how to monetize on that. It's a limiting factor. And I know that I have this limiting factor. So that's why I love speaking with people that come with crazy ideas. So their job is to think about crazy ideas, and my job to see how we make it, how we convert it into money. We had zillions of hours with our founders, by the way, not only in ThetaRay, but in previous companies as well, about their most craziest vision. And professional CEO's job is to take this crazy vision and make it true. It's like, professional driver is not necessary to reinvent, like Ferrari. Michael Schumacher doesn't really know how to build better Ferrari car, but he knows how to drive this Ferrari car very well. I don't claim to be able to build a new Ferrari, but if somebody gives me Ferrari, trust me, I know how to drive it very well, with all the obstacles and, in turns and ups and downs, etc. It's extremely important to create a rapport, a relationship, and extremely close trust. I think most of the investors today, most of the VCs like yourself know it. There is, I call it the old type of VCs that become less and less successful, that believe that founders are those who need to be fired very soon and replaced by professional CEOs. That's not my school. My school is founders are the soul of the company, and one needs to keep the soul of the company. The problem is that just with soul, you cannot feed your kids. So you need a little bit more. You need legs, eyes, arms, etc. That's why the first thing for me as a hired CEO is to create the trust with the founder, but also create an understanding that at the end of the day, if there is a conflict between creating a cooler idea, spending another year to perfect the product and do something that technologically, scientifically, artificial, product-wise, it's much more beautiful. But if that's not what customers want, customer is first. I always say that customer is not always right, but customer is always a customer.
Did you have conflicts with founders? If founders, I imagine many founders do not want to leave their executive positions in the companies. Did you have any serious conflicts with founders, and how you solved them? There is always a compromise, right, between what founders think and what is right. So you have to convince them, or how do you deal with that? Yeah, so it
took me time to develop this muscle of working with founders, because one thing one needs to respect. founders think that it's their baby. When investors come, that's the point. I'm very disciplined, and I think that every professional CEO should do it, not to claim that it's my baby. I came to educate the baby. I'm a coach that came to make sure that this baby will be a champion, but it's not my baby. And when they understand it, and I give them the respect. Look, this is your baby. If you want your baby to be just a mediocre baby, it's okay. But if you want your baby to be a champion in that field, I call it category leader. If you want your baby to be successful and rich and healthy, then, I need to coach the baby. And think about a parent that tell the coach.
You're a teacher. Yeah. You as a CEO, you're a teacher, and a founder is a parent. So sometimes teacher does what parent think is wrong, right? So, but who is always right? Is parent always right, or is the teacher always right?
I think that I'm more like a teacher, maybe is a good point, but more a leader and a coach. Coach, I tell people, coach, sometimes think about, this movie about Sylvester Stallone runs, in the rain, etc., and climbs the stairs. Coaches make the champions to do things that they don't like to achieve results that they like very much. Sometimes I tell founders, you need to do things that you don't like in order to achieve results that you will love. Luckily for me, I keep my promises. So time after time, they see that it's happening. It's a reality. The first time it was difficult because, I had to prove it. And now it's easier because people see that, usually, I develop all those slogans, no pain, no gain. So I tell them, the founders, including Professor Averbuch, and he knows, I said, look, when I will come, there will be pain, but trust me, there will be a lot of gain. But it only works when there is a very deep and profound level of respect, even admiration for the founders. They've done something that I would never be able to do. They came with an amazing idea, especially when you talk about ThetaRay founders. It's true. They came with something 10 years ago that today everybody feels is a reality, but the amount of scrutiny and mocking and even disrespect they got over the years is enormous. And they kept believing. I was very humbled and honored to be chosen, to make this vision a reality. So without a very deep level of trust and respect, nothing works. But when you have it, people will accept the fact that sometimes it's painful. Sometimes founders have to leave if it doesn't work.
Okay, so maybe Mark, one question for you as a potential founder. If you are asked to found a company now, what would be your best possible idea? I'm sure you have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure you're just thinking about doing something constantly, joining some other firms. So what fascinates you? What's next big thing you think for you to build upon?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, Victor,
what's the problem? The problem you want to solve. I mean, what's the next big thing? Not big solution, but the big problem you want to solve.
Absolutely. And by the way, few companies already approached me. Small companies. There's some really interesting. They're willing to do management buyouts with me, etc. I told you will be the first one to approach, and you told me, Mark, if you have a good idea, come to me. So here, it's just between me and you. Nobody listens. Exactly. So I will definitely see some opportunities, but I know exactly what I'm looking for. And this is basically solving a problem that will be a very big problem, which is a safety security of artificial intelligence implementations, especially in boring situations. So when I built NetVision, which became the largest internet service provider in the Middle East at that time, one of the first, the thing that really excited me was now when everybody's connected, how you protect those people. And then I became a cyber expert, and one of the first Israeli companies in cybersecurity came out of NetVision, and NetVision became the first reseller of Checkpoint. And I even built personally the firewall for National Israeli Bank. I think the same situation is happening in AI. Many companies will provide AI solutions. Some of them will be great, some of them will be less great. But AI security or securing AI, I think this is an amazing problem. It will not be easy to solve. It will be very dangerous. It's becoming already very dangerous. Look, we are today, and I know that this podcast probably people will hear a year ago, so I will then encourage you to go in to see Google. Google introduced a solution that started to create pictures, and they had to shut it down one day after introducing it, right, Gemini, because it produced weird pictures. Think about it. One of the largest companies in the world had to shut down the biggest and most interesting capability of the system because they couldn't protect it. So protecting AI, and there are so many things that can go wrong.
You're going to protect AI against AI, because AI is that what will damage and threat AI, and you will be a kind of an AI solution that protects one AI against another AI, basically.
Exactly. And Victor, let me build on something that you said before. Bad guys will not disappear. I think when you invested in the company, I told you that when people will, transform the swords into plowshares, and there will be no war, and and the lion will live, or the wolf will live with the sheep peacefully, as they say in the Bible, companies like ThetaRay will not be needed anymore. But I don't think we'll get there in our lifetime. Until then, the bad guys will be more bold. They have access to the best technologies possible. They don't follow the rules. They don't follow IP or restrictions. They will be ahead of us when it comes to deploying technology to hurt us. On the other hand, I believe, and at least in my sort of career, I've seen it time after time, good guys always win. Maybe because there are more good guys. But let's make it clear. Bad guys will be using AI. There will be fight. And I love what you said. I will take it as a slogan. There will be a fight. Actually, it's already happening, AI against AI. So the only way for us to make a world safe for our children and for ourselves is to make sure that we create those digital guards that will help us to protect us and work with us against the bad AI. And that's exactly there I am looking for. As I told you, a very small company, no revenues, just established and already got a $60 million seed fund doing just fake detection. But think how terrible it is. And there are many, many more things that can go wrong. And the more organizations will start to deploy AI to solve very, very boring problems, production, shipment, logistics, etc., the more opportunities will be for the bad guys to attack AI, or maybe even AI mistakes. And there are so many great ideas. So building the new world of cyber-like companies that will protect AI, I love it, against AI is definitely something that excites me.
Okay, I'm really thrilled to see and be part of that for sure. So coming back to like micro things, how you manage as CEO. Are you better managing up or down? Managing teams or board expectations? And I was a little bit kind of want to like see your story and hear your views on what's the good board. What should board do for you as CEO? So, and how would you see like the best possible acting board? Or it should not like bother you with itself. So would you just be better without any board? So how would you see the board composition overall, conflicts in the board, how you just, how much time you allocate to managing the board in a way. So maybe you can just give a little bit of that perspectives.
Absolutely. And as you know, it's part of life. And again, some experience in dealing with boards, not always easy boards. So first of all, personally, and I know that there are different views and different CEOs. Personally, I love boards to be very much involved. I hate this, expression, lonely at the top. I don't want to be lonely. Why should I? I'm usually not the largest shareholder in the company, so everybody should help. And I don't have monopoly on wisdom, so people have much more knowledge than I do. Victor, we spend endless amount of hours with you, and you help me with all your experience in banks and financial institutions. Things that you learned over your career probably will not be able to learn in 20 years from now. So supportive board of directors, there is nothing better than that. It's an ability to discuss things on a strategic level. Actually, I think it's almost like an obligation of the board of directors to pull the CEO away from the day-to-day work and have strategic discussion. Because if you don't have clear view of where would you like to be in 2 years from now or 3 years from now, then you can't choose the right direction. Then you only do short term. And we all know that if we don't plan ahead, bad surprises are much more difficult to cope with. Good surprises, we are okay. We all know how to cope with good surprises, but bad surprises is something that we don't know how to cope. So in my view, and again, I know that not everybody thinks the same. In my view, it's extremely important to have close relationship with the board, get their advice. My way of achieving it is to be extremely transparent, brutally transparent with the board, talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then getting advice and understanding that, some advice, I would say differently. When you're in a sort of in a soap bubble, you can't see the bubble from inside. You can only see it from the outside. So I want people to tell me, Mark, something is wrong here. And I remember at least one conversation with you when you told me, Mark, you're doing something really stupid. And based on this conversation, we prepared to it. It was, fintech's ability to sort of implement sophisticated systems. And it was a very good feedback. So we invested another 2 months, delayed the launch, invested another 2 months to make sure that what we sell is so easy to deploy that it's almost ridiculous. And, it was an amazing success. And so that's regarding the board. Now, regarding conflicts of the board, look, we're all human beings. We all have different needs. Obviously, it's easy to manage for me. It's easy to manage conflicts between the board and the company direction because then it's discussion. It's speaking openly and finding a solution, a compromise if needed, or, being insistent and trying to convince that my view is better or accepting the other view. When there's a conflict, a different type of conflict, which is conflict between shareholders, then it's a little bit more difficult because it has nothing to do with the company. But sometimes
it does, but it influences company badly. But you are part of that, but you could not really do much of this. Yeah.
So everybody chooses their own strategy. My strategy that worked for me time after time is just to make sure that I manage all my companies from the very first day as they were public companies. The amazing CFO of ThetaRay, the first day I hired him, the company was like barely selling a few millions of dollars. I said, look, from day one, it's a publicly traded company, reporting quarterly, reviewed audited report, etc., and treating all the shareholders as important shareholders. There's always a power struggle. There are larger shareholders and smaller shareholders. In public companies, there are rules, regulations, and laws created to make sure that minority investors being protected, small investors being treated the same way as large investors, that inside information cannot be used. So my compass, and it's a moral compass, but it works for me time after time, is to make sure that I don't, just take the side of the most stronger, larger, or most aggressive investor. But I will get out of my way, will work very hard to make sure that all the investors will be protected and that I will represent the interests of all the investors. It's not easy, but time after time, it did work for me because I think any other direction can kill a company. If it's a public company, it's illegal. If it's a private company, it's legal, but it can kill a company.
If there is a conflict in the board or a turbulence, and you need to still work with your team, right? How do you correspond? How do you tell your team what's going on at the board? Do you usually you said you are very transparent. Do you need to be so transparent when you manage down? Okay, guys, I got this crazy board meeting today and I was blamed hard. We all were blamed hard for not performing well. Or you still kind of do it much softer, or you do not tell everything you being heard, you being a part of in the board, if it was a tough board. How do you sustain this momentum of people being hardworking, being responsive, doing their best and still not being appreciated?
So
how does transparency would work in that way?
Absolutely. So I have a few ground rules. One, I tell my team when I go to the board of directors, if something is really, really good, it's you. If something is really, really bad, it's me. So I take responsibility. And you've been in our board meetings. If there's a need for tough communication with my people, I'll do it. But, they need to hear it from me. So first of all, they get the credit for the successes. I take the credit for failures because I'm a leader. It's my job. And if I made their own decision, or if they might make their own decision, it's my problem. Second, I will be. I really believe in sort of being being candor with people. some people call it brutally honest. I will communicate the communication the same way as it was communicated to me. But again, I will take responsibility. I will say, look, it didn't work well. The board didn't like what we do. It's my responsibility. You are part of the team. Let's think how we can solve it. In many cases, I can't be transparent because, sometimes it's internal information, sometimes it's investment discussion, sometimes it's a cash position of the company that God forbid somebody will discover. You need to be very, especially customers, they will be afraid, etc. And then at least I take a point of being very, very transparent about being not transparent. So look, I want to be transparent with you. You will hear nothing about this board of directors. And when people come and tell me, this guy in the board was tough with you, I said, I want to be transparent with you. No comment. By the way, I do it at the company level as well. There was more than one situation where we had all hands and people ask a question because I said you can ask any question. I said it's a great question. I will not be very transparent with you. I will not give you an answer to this question.
Okay, thank you. So maybe last question on your CEO role. So how did this CEO role evolve in last 20 years? You've been CEO for almost 20 years now in different companies. And how do you think that it will evolve going forward? So what was important 10 years ago? What's important now? And what will be important in 5 years from now? Same, or it's going to change and you just feel this change?
I definitely feel the change. And, I'm so lucky because if you think about it, the management or the leadership evolved over the way it evolved over the last 100 years. Initially, it was management by instructions. You remember the Charlie Chaplin movies? You got an instruction, you do exactly what you've been told. And then it was management by, I'm sort of running fast forward. It was management by objectives. Okay, so if you have good objectives, you will know what to do. Like you need to make sure that X amount of customers are good and you communicate X amount of good communication. And now I think it became management by values. So if somebody knows that the value of the company is customer obsession, I don't need to give them very well-defined objectives. They will understand what they need to do. And the beautiful part that happened over the 20 years, it became leadership by values. It's not even management by values anymore because you manage people. So I think that managing people and management knowledge become a much higher EBITDA margin business. When I speak with my CFOs, I tell them, look, you studied accounting. And in accounting, there is something really weird. So, in accounting practices, whether it's US GAAP or other GAAPs, tables, chairs are assets, right? And then you depreciate them over time. People, salaries are expenses. And I said it's totally weird because the real assets of the company are not the chairs and the tables. The real assets of the company go home and then they need to make decision to come back to work. So they leave the balance sheet in the night and then in the morning they come back to the balance sheet. So managing assets who are human is such an exciting thing. I love it. And I think that's what's happening. If you think the largest companies market share today in the world, whether it's Apple and Google and Nvidia and Microsoft, etc., are all based on people. And I think it will definitely continue. Sam Altman said something beautiful that really hooked me. He said he will not be surprised if we'll see the first billion-dollar company managed by just 10 people in the next few years. And he will not be surprised if he will see the first decacorn, $10 billion company managed by one person. And with by no people. Yeah, I try to say that people are still important. Yeah. But you see my point of view. So I think that running great companies is becoming more and more of a leadership game. And
okay, is it more difficult to work with individuals now with talent than it was 10 years ago? Is there a different demand, people coming to the job with different objectives? Are they still hungry for what? Purpose, money? Is it you just feel difference in people's behavior overall, or people are people, they were same 10 years ago now and will continue to be the same human beings with all their pluses and minuses?
People are people, they're same human beings, but they're in a different place in life. If we talk about this Maslow pyramid, our parents were still in a place in the pyramid where they have to deal with maybe not survival, but finding, building families, etc. Our kids are definitely in top of the pyramid when they look for self-fulfillment. So they are hungry, but not necessarily for money. They're hungry for self-fulfillment, for sense of belonging, for feeling that they do something good. That's why in all my companies, and ThetaRay is not different, but in all my companies, and more, of course, in ThetaRay, we communicate the fact that how we make the world a better place. Of course, we make it profitable, but making the world a better place, I think this is something that's extremely important for the new generation of employees. And they're willing to sacrifice money. They're willing to sacrifice their personal life if they see that they can make a real difference. And that's what I believe is becoming extremely important in hiring talent. When you can do it, by the way, it's easy. In ThetaRay, we managed to get people from companies where they were proposed to get 2 or 3 times more salaries. And they came to us because they could feel that they really make a difference and make the world a better place. And they can come home and tell their grandmother and grandfather and the kids or the partners how great the world was.
Talking about failures, maybe you can, and obviously we are learning from failures a lot more than from our success. So maybe you can think of anecdotal story about your biggest failures and how did you overcome them? So what did you learn from them?
Yes, I have to say that, there's no one single company that I didn't have a failure. That, I bring so many scars on my back. So there's a constant amount of stories I can tell you, maybe 2. One of them in ThetaRay, when we built the company, it was amazing technology. It was a small company. And I said, look, we bring those algorithms. We need to bring them to customers. We need to make a connection. They will use their own tools. They bought, whether it's Actimize, etc. So one thing we really don't need to develop is AI. UI, like user interface. So we built an amazing product with almost no, UX, no beautiful screens. And people didn't want to buy it. Like when they didn't have any, like all those engineers, when they didn't have any choice, they bought it at GE and Singapore Airlines, etc. But it was so ugly. And then I met a company and they told me, look, we actually don't have technology yet, but we managed to raise money because we took these amazing advisors that built beautiful user interfaces. Just because we had this user interface, managed to raise funds. I came to that company. I found them. I told them how much. They were very cheap, by the way, which is because they didn't understand. And we built a beautiful, beautiful user interface. And when we showed it to General Electric, they were so excited that they gave me a head of design of GE that today, by the way, is working for Pixar and now in Google. And it took a team of 100 people that said, look, you know what? As a partnership, I would help you to improve this user interface because it's so cool. So it was a huge mistake. I was very lucky that there was people that are smarter than me that helped me. But in each and every company, maybe just one, Skyvision, amazing company, we came and built satellite connectivity solution, very sophisticated, 50 countries. It was one of those startups that started to distribute dividends. Imagine how much money we made. But first, when we came to Africa, it was Angola. I said, look, we need to compete with other people, so we need to be much cheaper, right? You compete for price. And people in Angola told us, look, we're sick and tired for you Europeans come and selling us, terrible service at very low price. Do you think we just bottom feeders? Give us high quality service, even if it's more expensive. I'm so glad that I listened to them. So we became the most expensive company in Africa, and the company grew from $0 to $100 million of runway in just few years. So, I constantly make mistakes, failures, but I'm lucky. I always hire people that are smarter than me. In my case, it's not very difficult, and I listen to them, and they usually know how to point out the mistakes I make.
Thank you. Look, today, many founders are struggling to raise cash, right? Today, raising cash is very difficult. And I wish all founders and CEOs in companies to overcome this challenge as an investor, right? But I understand that many companies won't survive. So if you may give good advice to those founders, what they need to do, is it time to sell? Is it time to cut costs? Is it time to find a partner, merge with some others? What would be the best single advice, if I may, and when you think it become easier from your perspectives, when founders will see that money is and interest is back to the market and they will be able to raise. I know that ThetaRay was one of the very few companies that experienced an explosive growth in revenue in last years, especially in last 2 years. Also accounted to your success in building up a plug-in product, which is easy to deploy, but also because of a tailwind in compliance. Everybody started to be concerned. Everybody needed a compliance solution, and you were right in time to deliver it. And obviously, you had a lot of demand from investors, and I remember last round was oversubscribed quite significantly, and we didn't expect even to raise that much money. We even didn't want to raise that much money. But it is probably one of very few examples during last 2 years. Still, like, many are struggling now. So what would be your take?
So first of all, feel free if you have CEOs of companies that you invested, they can come to me and I will give them more detailed advice, because I love raising funds. I'm passionate about it. And, when you love something, you become better and better. Shortly speaking, the answer is yes to all the things that you said. If I will be more specific, unit economics, the most important thing. The idea of, you will buy something, you will buy dollar bills and you will sell them for 70 cents. And then suddenly you sell it for 80 cents and say that you improved your unit economics doesn't work. Investors want to understand that if the company is growing, they will make more money. At a certain point of time, it will even reach profitability. Investors, I think, are okay with company losing money because it's investment, but they need to see the light in the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, many CEOs thought that the idea is just to grow, and they don't understand if you're in a situation where the faster you grow, the more money you lose, and you will become the victim of your success. It doesn't really work. And
so you would advise to sacrifice growth versus improving EBITDA margin and profitability, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, you don't necessarily need to sacrifice growth. You can sort of slow down your top line, or you can improve the bottom line, like the expense line. Today, people are much cheaper. It's much easier to find good people. You remember when COVID hit, we immediately fired 25% of the company. We let go. And even the board told me it was too aggressive. Eventually it was. And some of the people then could come back to the company. So one of the things that...
with half of the salary they received before the crisis, right?
Yes.
So basically lay off people and then hire them back with 50% of what
look, we didn't want to do it, but we lower salaries, we let people go. And some people just came back when we started to hire like crazy. So, if you're captain of a ship and suddenly, the ship comes to the shore and, and you need to reduce the weight, or if you like flying, an airplane, etc., you will not have hesitation. You will throw, all this ballast. Somehow, first-time CEOs find it very difficult. I understand. I also found it very difficult to let people go, amazing people. But when I tell them, look, if I will not let you go, the entire ship will sink. But if I will let you go, you still keep your options. I will make it as convenient for you and help you as much as I can. It's a totally different story. So first of all, really, that's the time to cut expenses, just because it's much easier to find great talent at much lower cost. Second, make sure that you work very close with your existing investors. They need to believe in the company. Even if they don't have money to invest, they need to believe in the company, because new investors will speak with old investors. They'll ask them what's going on. Second, create amazing relationship with your customer. Victor, you know that one of our larger customers gave us a 3-year cash up front when we really needed it. And I'm not sorry about it. And we never forget it. But if you have vendors, check vendor financing. If you can delay payments, if you use Google Cloud or Microsoft Cloud, yes, definitely they can delay your payments for a year if they know that you will eventually pay, which will cost you burn. Will allow you a better burn rate. And again, everything I'm saying, that we did. Second, come to your customers, customer funding. Now it's the time to give them a discount if they are helping you and giving you money upfront, prepayments, etc. Use them to bring additional customers. And then, of course, when you come to future investors, it's not a charity. People would like to make money. So show them how they will make money. Change the business plan to show how they will make money. Put your ego aside. If you want to make a $10 billion company, that's great. But if now your valuation is $200 million, make a plan how you sell the company for $600 million. So investors will know that they will do 3x if it's a private equity in 2 years. like, you should understand the needs of your customers. But people don't understand it. It's not about customers. It's about stakeholders, and investors are stakeholders. They want to make money, and as well, employees are stakeholders. They want to make money and make something really great. So it was a long answer, but I'm passionate about investments, and I think that good companies will be able to keep raising funds.
And I will certainly refer some of my founders to yourself.
You're right. We raised
useful.
We raised $50 million just a few months ago, but overall we raised $150 million, even when it wasn't easy. So thank you, being one of the people that supported us time after time. When I talk about what needs to be done, you actually walked my talk and did exactly what I say good investors will do.
Good. Finally, Mark, are you a happy man?
I am very, very, very happy man. Very happy man. And as the time passes, I become even more happy. People talk about life-work balance. In my case, it's very balanced. It's all work, but it's life. My kids,
You're one of those people who live to work, not who work to live, right?
Oh, absolutely. I live to work, and my kids know it, and they love it. And and I should be careful now, calculating very well. But I'm like 30 something years married to the same woman, and we love each other. And one of my kids, when she was young, she told me, Daddy, I wish you that you will die of work. And I said, what do you mean? You want me to die? She said, no, I just wish you that you will work till the last day of your life because you love it so much. And yeah.
And if there is something what you miss, what is it? Still a happy person still can miss something. Is there anything you would think of your wish? What's the biggest wish?
I wish I could contribute. I know it sounds a cliche, but I try to do it. I wish I could contribute more to the world. So I still feel that the projects I'm taking on myself are too small. Like I'm really jealous of Sam Altman, etc., that really changing the world. So I'm still looking to find where I can make a bigger difference in the world. Of course, there are private stuff. I've always wanted to finish my pilot license. Now I have time to do it, but I always find something to do. But really, what I feel that I'm missing, I never know. Maybe if I would have, joined United Nations when I was a kid and took a different path, I could make a world even better place. But I never look back. But looking forward, if I can keep doing what I really love. Which is running companies to growth and execution and thriving and becoming large, but in parallel making the world a better place. This is something I would love to do more than I'm doing right now.
Thank you. And I hope that this podcast will contribute to this world to be a little bit better after people would listen to your encouraging speech and this very interesting conversation we had. So it was Mark Gazit, who is my friend and CEO and one of co-founders of ThetaRay and many other great companies, a passionate leader, a person who never stops and who is definitely an overachiever. Thank you, Mark. And that was Victor Orlovski, who is hosting this podcast. And see you soon in the new series of podcasts. Thank you. Ventures from the Valley is brought to you by R136 Ventures. To find out more about R136 Ventures and how we scale mid to late stage startups by unlocking their true potential through investment, visit r136.vc. We will be back soon. In the meantime, make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. On behalf of our team here at R136 Ventures, thanks for listening.